I'm and I work for the Athens Institute for Education and Research, which is a World Association for Academics and Researchers. I'd like to welcome you to Athens Interview Series, where we interview the participants which attend our many conferences in Athens to present their work. Today I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Pavlik, who is a professor at Rutgers University in the USA. Hello, Dr. Pavlik. Welcome to Athens.
Thank you. I love to be in Athens. It's a great city.
Okay, so give us a brief academic introduction of yourself.
Well, I'm a professor of journalism and media studies in the School of Communication and Information at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, which is enjoying its 250th anniversary. So it's an old university by American standards. You know, maybe not by Greek standards. But, and so my work focuses mainly on the impact of technological change on journalism, media, and society.
So tell us a few words about this.
Well, I look at how changing technology affects the way that journalists or media professionals do their work, you know, how they actually go the craft of gathering the news, producing the news, the whole process, or the same thing for any form of media content, you know, how we create that content, so our production methods. Second, I look at how the changing technologies affect the way that we tell stories, the content that we create, whether those stories are in journalism or whether they're in the media more generally. And that's the focus of the research I'm presenting here at Tenerife is one piece of that. Then third, I'm looking at technological changes' impact on how we deliver and disseminate, you know, sort of the distribution of the content that journalists and media professionals create. Then I also look at how the public's engagement with journalism and media is changing. And so, you know, the rise of social media, for example, has really transformed the level and nature of public engagement in journalism and media. So, you know, all of those things, and there's lots of things within that, you know, many topical areas. So, but that's an overview of it.
Okay, so tell us a few words about your presentation at the conference.
Well, what I'm presenting here is one piece of that work that looks at the emergence of storytelling in the first electronic medium of mass communication, which is radio. I have a new book on that more generally, and this is one piece of that area, which is specifically looking at the emergence of storytelling on radio in Austria, which was sort of the fifth country behind the US, the UK, France, and Germany was Austria. I look at the emergence of how stories were told, the theater, literary dramatizations, they sort of call them in Austria, in the 1920s and 1930s.
Okay, so what interests you in Austria's early radio broadcasting?
Well, you know, the emergence of storytelling in media is so important, but it's not been well studied in many parts of the world where it emerged. And Austria was a place that, and when radio first emerged, it was actually the place where research on radio began. Paul Lazarsfeld did the first study of radio anywhere in the world in 1932. And so Austria is very important in the history of radio, but the emergence of how we tell stories on radio was very understudied in Austria. And I had spent time there about 10 years ago as a Fulbright Distinguished Chair and looking at different aspects of media in the context of Austria and Central Europe. And so I began to develop my, you know, sort of understanding of some of the history there. And so recently, these have been lost since the rise of fascism and World War II. But recently, a discovery was made of some 500 original radio play scripts from that period of, you know, the 20s and 30s. And so they became available, and I was the first professor to gain access to these through the archive of broadcasting in Austria. And so that was a big factor in my saying, I can actually study that archive.
Very interesting.
I looked at other archives, because they have other archives there as well. But that was a very important piece of the archive, those 500 of the scripts for original plays that were produced in Austria during this early period of broadcasting.
So, are there any lessons to be learned in the 21st century radio media?
Well, I think so, and I would, you know, today I would reframe it as it's not just radio. It's really how we use audio form media.
Okay.
Because nowadays, people, they listen to radio, but they also listen to podcasts. And so audio-based storytelling is very much alive today. So I think some of the lessons from the early Austrian experience still resonate today or could be relevant. And three in particular that I would point to. One is the way that music, how are you going to define that? Music is a really important part of audio storytelling, and it's been used very effectively since those earliest days, and can still be today. And many podcasts use elements of musical, arrangement in some fashion. So music is still a really interesting and important part of how we can engage audiences because it taps into kind of an emotional, side of things. So that's one. Second is the broader cultural, geopolitical context for the place in which we're creating these stories. Those things, we draw on that for the stories we tell, but those factors also shape the stories we tell. And so as a storyteller, being more consciously aware of the broader cultural and geopolitical context of what we're about, the substance of what we're doing, how it's shaping and shaped by those things, or what way we engage that. That's really an important thing to be constantly thinking about. People talk about, can you be objective? Can you be neutral if you're a journalist? For example? No, I don't think you can, but what you can be is much more aware of that broader geopolitical and cultural context and tell your stories within that in a way that's really, aware of it. That can make a huge difference. And then finally, innovation. In those early years of Austrian broadcasting, there were a lot of remarkable stories of innovation. And that is something that storytellers today can still really tap into. So don't just think that there's some formula out there for how to do a great podcast. Well, watch what makes for great podcasts in terms of your opinion or what wins awards, but try to be innovative too. This is a new medium that's still got plenty of room for new ideas. And so that's a lesson from early Austria to today is, be an innovator in how you tell stories in an audio form, or any form, but specifically this project's about audio, so.
Yeah, thank you.
And the nice thing about audio, one of the reasons it's so popular, this is sort of like a sub-theme. This is not an idea that I came up with, but it's in the literature, is the idea that audio media are secondary. Not like visual media, which are primary. You can't be watching a movie or watching television while you're doing something else. You don't want people texting and driving, for example.
Yeah, of course.
When you gotta be visual, all right? You want to be. It's got to take. It's primary, and that's all you should be doing. Otherwise, you risk a lot of potential problems. But audio is a very secondary medium. That's one of the reasons why audio in a car can work well. But in general, that's one of the reasons people love audio storytelling. And you could take more advantage. Storytellers could be innovative and creative in using that secondariness. So that's an important part of why it's still very popular. It makes it very portable. You can take your stories with you. You can get them anywhere. It's part of the popularity of streaming services today. It's that secondariness, not just the emotional. People think it's all about the emotion. Well, that's important, but it's also the secondariness.
Yeah, you can take it with you everywhere.
Yeah.
Sure. So how were you introduced to Adler and what made you attend the conference?
Well, I came a couple of years ago. I had learned about it, I think, from a colleague. I don't remember. It was but I did a paper here a couple of years ago. And I thought it was a great conference. And I thought I've got to find a way to do another project so that I could have a chance to come back here again.
Nice, and you found out
and so
again?
I had another project, and it made sense to submit it here. And so I got it accepted, fortunately. And so I'm back because it was a great conference before, and so far it's been terrific.
Okay, maybe next year.
Still the first day.
Maybe next year as well.
Well, if I have another paper, you never know because there's so many conferences and so little time.
Yeah, true. Thanks.
Oh, my pleasure.